to start contemplating. Now, today it's become very popular to be a Chassid. Chassidut Chabad is the biggest Chassidut today. Thank you, Breslov is also growing Chassidut, and there's also many other smaller Chassiduts. Chassidut in their infancy, in the early generations, were started by certain Rabbis, big tzaddikim, but many others went against them. The Gaon Mivina went as far as to say that the original Chabad and Breslov, he said, were the closest religions to Judaism. He said that they've changed the focus from Hashem to a rabbi, to a human of flesh and blood, which many went against at the time, but over time there has been many good things that have come out of Chassidut. Now we've talked about this already last week. What's the Chidush? The Chidush is that many people that do tshuva are attracted to Chassidut. Many people that are religious are very attracted to the Chassidut look. And they go to Chabad or to Breslov, and they feel like they're more part of Judaism if they're part of Breslov, if they're part of Chabad, if they're part of some other Chassidut, because they look a certain way and they act a certain way and so on. But if you look at all of the Chachamim, you see that this is not Chassidut. As a matter of fact, one of the giants of Chabad, the one before the Lubavitcher Rebbe, his father-in-law, the Admor Chabad, Rav Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, Zatzal, he wrote himself. This is not 300 years ago. This is in the previous generation. He said, דעה זרה שבדברי חסידות חיצוניים, שגון ההשתתפות בהתוודעות, I'll just read it in English, save the time. It says, the strange and foreign opinion or thoughts that Chassidut is based on the exterior, on keeping of the ilulas of all of these people that have died, these tzaddikim that have died in the past. Everybody has these big celebrations, ilula for this one, ilula for that one. The yartzites of all the tzaddikim, the parties, the simcha, all the dancing, the clothing, the tlabshut belevushe chasidim, the songs of Chassidut. This is what makes you a Chassid? Rachmana litzlan, he said, Hashem erachem. May the merciful one save us. That's what he says literally. This is what you think Chassidut is? The clothing and the songs and the yard sites and the food. This is what you think makes you a Chassid? This is the top Chassid in the world. This is what you think? Rachmana litzlan, he says. Hashem erachem. Hashem have mercy on us. Kama vekama nefashot bechasidei Chabad. He's talking about his own Chassidut. והרבה אברכים חסידים תבואים, מר לי לומר את האמת המרה בעומק רע. He says, who is he talking about? He's talking about his own Chabad, his own people. He goes, they're thinking that it's all about their clothes and the beard and the hats and the songs and the lulas and all of this stuff. And he goes, it's bitter for me to be the reporter of such horrible news that even the avrechim, even the ones that learn and the ones that call themselves Hasidim are as far from the truth as can be. It's bitter for me deep inside to see this. קשה לדבר ולומר את האמת. It's hard to say and speak the truth. אך עד כמה שהדבר קשה, but despite how difficult it is, מן ההכרח לתאר את המצב כפי שהוא. It's the only way. We must purify the situation despite the condition that it's in. בין האברכים החסידים ישנם כאלה שגדלו בסביבה חסידית, בבתים חסידים, אצל מלמדים חסידים שבגלל כל זאת חיצוניתם של אותם אברכים היא חסידית, אבל פנימיותם ריקה. He says, between all of these learners, these avrechim, these chassidim, that grew up in an environment that call themselves Chassidut, in houses that call themselves Chassidim, and with teachers that call themselves Chassidim, and with an exterior that called itself Chassidut, those same Avrechim and Chassidim only had an exterior, and their inside, Reka, empty, nothing. Has nothing to do with Chassidut. They only had this, you know, some people, they wear a costume once a year on Purim. Some people wear a costume the whole year. Who's it coming from? It's not coming from Yaron Reuven. This, by the way, for anyone that wants to curse me out before you do it, you can actually check this yourself. Lekutei Divurim Chelek Bet, Daf 453. It's a source. הסיבה לכל זאת הוא העד המשמעת מקוטנתו לא קיבל על עצמו עולו של מחנך ומדריך. What's the reason for all this? The flawed learning. Flawed learning. הוא חינך את עצמו. He taught himself. Instead of finding himself a real teacher that's going to give him on the head a few times a week to do tshuva. Hey, listen, you got to keep Shabbat. Hey, listen, you stop going out with that girl. Hey, do. All the things. Somebody tell him the truth. Not just the mirror. But somebody that sees the flaws in him, but is trying to get him to take away the tameh. Instead, no, I can teach myself. I'm going to learn on YouTube. I'm going to pick a rabbi every week. I'm going to pick a different rabbi. I'm going to teach myself. I'm going to be my own rabbi. I'm going to ask myself questions. I'm going to read the books. What do I need you? I'll just open up a book, just like you open up a book. I'll ask a question. I'll answer my own question. What's the problem? הוא חינך את עצמו, הוא הדריך את עצמו, he taught himself, he led himself, ומהחינוך כזה צמח פרי כזה. This is the fruit that he got from it. יפה ומבריק מבחוץ ורקוב מבפנים. This fruit that grew, that came out of it, is beautiful from the outside and rotten inside. There's even more spicy things in the next letter, but I think you guys can get the point by now. We'll keep this one for next year. So, what is Chassidut? And what does it have to do with our Mishnah? Now, Chassidut is not about, as we just heard from the number one Chassid in the world in his time, it's not about the clothes, it's not about the fabring, it's not about the wigs, it's not about the jackets, it's not about anything related to your exterior. Although those things are part of it, that does not make you a Chassid or Chassidah. It does not. What makes a person a Chassid? A Chassid, by default, is a person that does above and beyond what's obligated. If there's an halacha, he does above and beyond what's required of him. That's what a Chassid is. Now, before you decide what you are and what you aren't, you have to give yourself a test. Just like Rabbi Yisrael Salan said, you have to test. You have to put yourself up to the test to see, can I be? Am I? Can I? Before they release a car into the market, what do? They give it a bunch of tests. Okay, let's test the brakes. So put some dummies in the car, drive the car with no actual real driver to some machine, some remote control, as fast as possible in the direction of the wall. That way we'll test the brakes, we'll test the metal itself, we'll test the The airbags will test a lot of things. That's how you test things. You put pressure on them. So the good news is that just like there is a difficulty in this generation, that same difficulty can be used to test yourself. If you want to see it to see if you can be a Chassid, then first and foremost, define it. What does Chassid mean? As we said, as the Torah says, as the Chachamim said, a Chassid is someone that does above and beyond. If, let's say, for example, the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, a person that's angry, Kol midei gehenom sholtim bo. All types of gehenom take control over him to such an extent that it's the equivalent, it get to the equivalent of him becoming considered like an idolater. Like, if, for example, if somebody's angry but he contains himself, it's one thing. It's not good, but it's one thing. But if he's so angry, he's like a little Hulk and he breaks half of his house, according to the Torah, that's considered the same thing as idol worship. Why? You just went and you've acted on your anger, and the sin, just like when you make a mitzvah, you're bringing a korban, you're bringing a sacrifice to Hashem. When you're doing a sin, and you're acting on it to such extremities, like being angry and breaking things, it's like you just brought a korban to who? The Satan himself. So what you do, instead of serving Hashem, you serve the Satan. That's Avodah Zarah. So, if someone wants to be a Chassid, forget about anger. Not only you're not allowed to be angry, you have to be happy. When? When it's most difficult. That for some people, they have that nature. Some people have that nature. I don't. I'm not one of those people. I'm not lucky enough for that. But some people have that nature. They're always calm. I'm more fire. I have to work on myself all the time. Some people have this nature. They're just mellow and calm and controlled. The World Trade Center could fall right next to them. It's like, yeah, wow, it was a good building. Yeah. You want to get some shawarma? Hey, well, you have no heart. There's no blood. What is there? Ice in your veins? Some people are like that. I'm like that about certain things like money. But other things like nonsense, like a lawyer that tells me right when I know it's wrong, that gets my blood really boiled. If Hashem wants to give me a gift in the next world, I'm going to ask Him to give me just the keys to Gehenom for the lawyer part. For the lawyer part. Not for all of it, just for the lawyer part. Let me just handle that part. How much I hate lawyers. I can give you stories from here to next year. You think I could talk for 3 hours? On lawyers, 30 hours to give you a lecture straight. Reshaim. So anyway... No, I hate them. I hate them. No, that's Chatanu Avinu Pashanu. Lawyers I hate. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I've never found a lawyer I don't hate, except my dear friend that died. Actually, I had a dear friend. His name was Larry Krauss. Allah Shalom, Tzaddik. He was the best lawyer I ever had, but he died. Other than that, every single lawyer I've ever met has been Mamas Rasha Merusha. I even had a couple of times that my own lawyer went against me. Meaning he gave my information to the opposing side. Yeah, I can tell you. Let's not get off topic. I can give you stories for hours about lawyers. So anyway, some people are calm. Some people have fire in their veins. They have a certain nature that Hashem created it. So if you want to be a Chassid, you have to be as far removed from the bad side as possible. If Hashem said no anger, you are not only not angry, you're happy. Now this is easy for some people, hard for others. But it's generally a test that only applies to some people. Some people. There is another test that applies to everyone, specifically our generation. The test is called money. If you want to know if you can be a Chassid, forget about if you are a Chassid, if you even can, if you can be a Chassid, start with money. Start with how you react to money. And the reason why, if you love money, you cannot be a Chassid. If you love money, you can never be a chassid until you start hating money. Because if you love money, by default, you will be cheap. If you love money, you're not going to share it. You're not going to be a generous person. And that's the opposite of Hashem. Hashem is generous. Hashem only gives. He never takes. So, by default, being cheap is the opposite of Hashem. It's the farthest point in the world from Hashem. It's the epitome of the opposite of Hashem. So a cheap person can never be a chassid. Why? Because you're supposed to be the opposite. Instead of being cheap, you're supposed to be most generous. So if you love money, you can't be a chassid. Not Chabad, not Bretzlev, not even your own chassidut. You by yourself, you can't be a chassid. You can't even call yourself chassid. Why? Because you have to do more than what you're allowed to do, more than you're supposed to. You're supposed to be generous. Chassid is overly generous. You're cheap. Woo! You're as far as can be. Cheap people on the opposite side of Chassidut because they're supposed to be above and beyond the requirement. If you spend more money on lunch than you do on Torah, you're as far from being a Chassid as we are from the moon. If your lunch costs you $100, but when it comes to kiruv, when it comes to buying a book of Torah, when it comes to a donation to a poor person, you only have $5 to give, but your lunch was $100, you're as far from being a chassid as we are from the moon. Not this moon, the moon on Pluto. So already we see, okay, who's a chassid? Not so many people. The looks, there's many of them, Baruch Hashem. Looks can be deceiving. I have nothing against Chassidut, but we have to identify what it is. Because a lot of people that do tshuva are attracted to it. Before you enter, you need to know what you're entering. If you're already doing tshuva, that means you want to stop being a faker. So you can't stop being a faker and be a new type of faker now. You can't go from fake to faker. You got to be real. That's why tshuva requires you to contemplate what you're doing. So this Mishnah, Baruch Hashem, is all about how people